Welcome to the first video of the MLS offseason. And boy, oh boy, the last 2 days, there's been so much that has happened in this very short span of the offseason. There's been a lot of trades, a lot of big signings that have just been confirmed. And we're not even get to the point where tomorrow is going to be the expansion draft, which I'll talk about that last. And also we have the super draft, the waiver draft, and the re-entry draft that is coming soon. So for those of you that think MLS offseason is boring and usually there is nothing happening, yeah, you are clearly wrong because there's been a lot of things that has happened. But let's talk about the biggest thing that is happening first. And also, I won't cover most of the signings and rumors throughout this video because that would be just too long and I wouldn't be able to fit it all on the board. But I'll talk about the most important one. And probably the most important news that just happened yesterday is that River Plate attacking midfielder Gonzalo Pity Martinez confirmed that he is joining Atlanta United for 15 million euros. Atlanta United is ready to activate the release clause by River Plate, and I think this would be a record signing if Pity Martinez goes to Atlanta, because I know last year when Ezequiel Barco went to Atlanta, it was for $15 million. This is 15 million euros, which is about $17 million, which I think that would be the record signing. And, it was kind of a little bit controversial of how Pity Martinez announced himself that he will join Atlanta. So if you guys seen in the Copa Libertadores final where River Plate, of course, won that. And by the way, for those of you wondering, did I watch the Libertadores final? The answer is yes. I kind of watched the last 30 minutes of the game. I saw all three River Plate go, including the empty netter right at the end of the game. But what was so controversial about Pity Martinez and the way he announced this deal is that he announced it in a post-game interview. So, that I feel like that is kind of a little bit disrespectful, the fact that you decide to announce yourself to join a new club right after your team just won the trophy. I mean, that's like saying Miguel Almiron probably will be saying that he will join Newcastle. I will be joining Newcastle United in the off season, and that's going to be right after when Atlanta United won MLS Cup. And I get why there's a lot of people that do not like that and think that that is completely disrespectful, which obviously in some way it is. But I guess maybe it's that he cannot wait to go to his new club. And there's been also a lot of talks of how a lot of South American players are now heading to MLS because of the violence that is going on in Argentina. I mean, when you look at what happened in the Copa Libertadores final, that final was moved because of fan violence, and it seemed like more players are now heading to the US and heading to MLS to escape from that violence. Although, one thing that I don't understand about this deal is that why did Pity Martinez decide not to go to Europe instead of going to Atlanta? I mean, he's not like 22 or 23. He's 25 years old. He's literally approaching the beginning of his prime, and you would think he should be going to Europe. Now, I'm not saying that he won't go to Europe. He might be doing what Miguel Almiron did when he was at Atlanta, and eventually he will go to Europe. But it's kind of interesting why he decided to just go to Atlanta first before going to Europe. But either way, this is a big signing for Atlanta United because Pity Martinez, he's clearly the answer for Miguel Almiron. I mean, both of them are central attacking midfielder, and this move also kind of confirms that Almiron is going to be joining a Premier League club. Like I said, most likely it is going to be Newcastle United, as the report has said. But yeah, basically with Almiron leaving and Pity Martinez coming in, yeah, this feels like Atlanta United is just kind of like recycling the way that they produce talent. And that is also another example of why this team is head and shoulder above the rest of the league. Like, the fact that just 2 days after winning MLS Cup, and they already found an answer to their biggest missing piece and the biggest question that will probably lingering in the offseason. It is impressive of how they can do that in just 2 days. Some other club in MLS might wait a month or two. No, Atlanta, they take 2 days. Now, having said that, I'm not going to say Pity Martinez is going to be guaranteed as good as Almiron. I mean, Almiron was just absolutely amazing. But knowing what I heard from people talk about his time at River Plate and what he did in the Copa Libertadores, he was amazing. Okay, he's almost as good as Almiron. So, yeah, that is a massive, massive signing for Atlanta United. The other news that has happened in these last 2 days, and this was obviously the biggest news, but there are also a couple of very interesting news that also happened. So FC Dallas, talk about getting rid of their main core. So a couple of weeks ago, Oscar Pereira, of course, left their team, and also going a couple of months back, Mauro Diaz left FC Dallas, and now it looks like Tesha Akindele and Maxi Urruti, 2 guys that were part of that core of FC Dallas, is now on their way out of the door. And not really on their way out, they're actually now on their way out. So Tesha Akindele is going to be traded to Orlando City for 100,000 TAM in 2019 and 50,000 GAM in 2020. For those of you that don't know what TAM is, that's target allocation money, and GAM is basically general allocation money. And Maxi Urruti is traded to Montreal for 75,000 TAM in 2019 and first round pick of 2019. Now, what I'm very kind of shocked about these 2 deals is that Maxi Urruti goes to Montreal and Dallas is only going to get 75,000 out of that. Like, that is really low amount of money for Maxi Urruti. You would think that he would probably be traded for maybe around 300 or 400,000 TAM, considering the fact that Urruti, even though technically he did not have as good of a season as he did a couple of years ago, he still got 8 goals and 11 assists. And you would think that for a guy that has that kind of number, he would be right up there about 400 or 300,000 TAM. But instead, they only got 75,000. And they actually got less TAM than what Tesha Akindele has got. And Tesha Akindele wasn't really in the starting 11 for this FC Dallas team. He was mostly coming off the bench. So, yeah, it is very strange of why exactly FC Dallas decided to let Urruti leave for that cheap of an amount. And if you're Montreal, this is an absolute steal for you. Like 75,000 in TAM. Okay, yes, you did give up your first round draft pick, but obviously draft pick in MLS seems a little bit less kind of important than what you get in, let's say, the NFL or MLB or even in the NBA. But just for 75,000 TAM, yeah, that is a really, really low number. And, for Orlando City, obviously, I think they're probably going to use Akindele as their backup striker because, they already have Dom Dwyer, and maybe they'll add in a little bit more depth in terms of their attacking piece. But I'm still kind of shocked of the fact that Urruti has been let go for that amount of money. It is just ridiculously low for a player that is really, really good. But the other news, the Rapids, of course, have traded their goalkeeper Zach McMeth to Vancouver for 100,000 TAM in 2019. And, it will be interesting to see if McMeth will be the starting goalkeeper for Vancouver, considering the fact that I believe Milinovic is the goalkeeper currently at Vancouver, and maybe both of them will kind of have a battle to see who gets the starting role in that position. And then the Union, of course, traded Fabian Herbert to Chicago for second round draft pick. Herbert hasn't really done very well with the Union and had kind of struggled to get minutes for that team. So this is just a move where they kind of want to get rid of some of that salary that Herbert, of course, have and clear up that cap space. Montreal, of course, they have traded Maxime Crepeau to Vancouver, and Orlando City also traded a player to Vancouver. They traded PC to Vancouver for a third round draft pick in 2019, and for Montreal, who traded Maxime Crepeau to Vancouver, they are going to get 50,000 TAM and a fourth round draft pick in 2020. So Vancouver, obviously under now Marc Dos Santos, they clearly are started to try to build up their squad. Although, so far when you look at the players that they got, it's not really kind of the players that you would say, yeah, it's going to make an instant impact. They're kind of like just maybe depth piece kind of player. I mean, PC, Maxime Crepeau, both of those guys were kind of like depth piece and guys that are kind of like on the reserve. Zach McMath, maybe he could be a starting goalkeeper for the Whitecaps. Like I said, there's going to be a battle between him and Milanovic for that goalkeeper position. But yeah, they're kind of just trying to get the snowball rolling early on, considering the fact that I'm pretty sure Marc Dos Santos is going to continue to make some big move to improve that team. And something that wasn't on this board that I also want to talk about Vancouver is that they're saying that Kai Kamara potentially is not going to be returning for that team, which I am kind of surprised because I had heard reports that Kai Kamara was going to potentially return to Vancouver, even though originally when the Whitecaps announced their end of the season roster, he wasn't included in that list and he had his contract decline. And also there's speculation that Kendall Waston might not be back for Vancouver too. So basically Vancouver is actually going to be in danger of losing their best striker and probably their best defender. That is very interesting. I'm not quite sure why exactly the Whitecaps would decide to let go their best defender and their best attacker on that team. Maybe it's for cap space or anything, but let's just hope that is a move that doesn't haunt them back. And I think the one that might haunt them back potentially could be Kendall Waston going, because that defense for Vancouver, which were not really that good, at least when Kendall Waston is there, he at least kind of control that back line. And they also will miss a presence on the set piece, considering the fact that he is usually the guy that they target on the set piece. But the other news going on, and speaking of another guy that I am kind of surprised that got let go, Samuel Armenteros would not be returning to the Timbers after Portland decided to not extend Armenteros' loan or even buy Armenteros after next season. And it's kind of interesting to see that Armenteros is not coming back, considering the fact that he was starting for this Timbers team for a majority of season before he went down with that knee injury. And him and Jeremy Ebobisse was kind of sharing that striker role. And Armenteros, in the beginning of the season, he was definitely very good, but he kind of really cooled off. And then when the injury happened, that's when he kind of really fell out of favor. But I would think that they probably could have kept Armenteros for another season. And I think with Armenteros now on the waiver market, I expect another team to potentially pick him up, because Armenteros, what he did with the Timbers this season, he was a very good striker. He was a very deadly kind of striker that can put the ball into the back of the net. And this also kind of confirms that Portland is gonna use Jeremy Ebobisse as their striker for the future. And Ebobisse definitely has shown a lot of promise with the Timbers this season. You know, he was one of the big part of the Timbers going all the way to MLS Cup before losing to Atlanta. And it's also going to be interesting to see whether or not if Abobasi could break in that U.S. men's national team. You know, he's still very young, but we shall see if he can continue his development, and potentially he will break in to the national team level. But finally, the Quakes, of course, have rumored to sign Brazilian midfielder Jetson. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And if this signing does happen, I, of course, will make a video about this, because whenever the Quakes sign a player, I obviously have to make a video just about that player. And, you know, obviously this doesn't really excite me whatsoever. This is kind of reminds me of the Joel Kuiper kind of signing, where, you know, Joel Kuiper, he was a guy that we never heard about, and it took us a couple of days to find out that before he came to the Quakes, he was playing in the Swedish second division. And for Jetson, you know, he was, from what I heard recently, he was playing in the second division of the Brazilian league, and his old team actually got promoted to the Brazilian Serie A. And, you know, it's not really a signing that just make me think that it's going to immediately improve this team. And most likely, I think this piece that we got is most likely just for depth, or maybe most likely this is kind of like the replacement for Fatai Alashe, because Alashe, he was a guy that was used for our bench and a guy that used for depth piece, and I think that's what Jetson is here for. Other than that, I don't see how he's going to break in the starting 11. I think the midfield for us right now, you know, as much as there's so many problems with that team, with this team, the midfield might be an area that I'm not that concerned just yet, because I think Godoy and Felipe, both of those guys will be very solid in that midfield. But what I'm still concerned is the defense, and also in the fullback position for this team. And then finally, expansion draft, of course, is tomorrow, and I'm just going to quickly explain the rules of expansion draft for you. Oh, so there's going to be 5 teams that is not going to be participating in the expansion draft, because they already had a player picked in last year's expansion draft. So the Quakes, Seattle, SKC, TFC, and Columbus are the 5 teams that will not be participating in, because LAFC had picked one of their player in the expansion draft last year. And I also put Portland in there because apparently Cincinnati and Portland has kind of a gentleman agreement when Portland decided to sell Fernando Audi to Cincinnati, and that Cincinnati agreed that they will not pick another Portland player in the expansion draft. Obviously, this agreement doesn't mean that Cincinnati can just, they don't have to agree on that, and they can still pick a Portland player. But obviously, that's kind of backstabbing if that is the way FC Cincinnati is going to go for. And obviously, it would have been applied the same situation to the Quakes if the Quakes were in this expansion draft, because Fatai Alashe going to FC Cincinnati would have had a gentleman agreement with the Quakes of not picking another player from them. But obviously, the Quakes are already on that list of teams that will not be participating in this expansion draft, because they already got a player picked from last year's draft. And just to quickly explain the rules of expansion draft, it's pretty easy to understand. You know, Cincinnati obviously have 5 rounds to pick 5 different players from the unprotected list of all 23 teams. Now, they don't pick 5 players per team, but they pick 5 players from the unprotected list that all 23 teams puts in. And there's certainly a couple of very interesting names that teams decided to put on the unprotected list, and I won't be surprised if those names is going to be picked up by FC Cincinnati. And also, I will do a video tomorrow about the expansion draft resort. But basically, besides the fact that they get those 5 players, they will get 3 minutes per round to think about who they're going to pick up. And yeah, that is pretty much it. It's not a really hard rule to understand. You know, it used to be in the expansion draft where you pick up 10 players for the draft, and for the new team, they of course would get 10 players from the unprediction list of those teams that puts in the expansion draft. But recently they have put down that number to just 5 players that the team that the expansion team will get in the expansion draft. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this week, well, not this week, but for today's MLS Trade and Rumors news. I know this video kind of gone a little bit longer than I anticipated, but there was a lot of things that I want to talk about. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.